And hey, everybody, thank you for joining us on the FareCompare weekly video podcast. My name is Rick Sini. I'm the co-founder and CEO, and this is episode number 35. We're going to chat about a couple of new and sort of painful news topics. One of them is the airlines actually getting a successful airfare hike in. It didn't affect everybody, but it did get raised prices, close to $8 round trip. So we'll talk a little bit about that, actually between $6 and $8 round trip. And then we'll also talk about some of these crazy Instagram photos. In fact, I was on a radio show this morning. Chicago says they have 3-hour wait times at O'Hare to get through TSA security. We'll also talk about one of an interesting Eventurist event of the week. That looks like it's going to be some fireworks, which is pretty cool. And we'll also take a question from the customer. So let me introduce our editor from the site at FareCompare.com, Ann McDermott. Hey, Ann, how's it going?
Well, I just recently dropped a spawn off at the airport here, and we left the house at like 4:30 a.m. for a 9 o'clock flight. Now, of course, that's usually how you do it in Los Angeles, but no, we left specifically early because of the horrendous TSA lines, which you are going to talk about, I know.
Yeah, I've done a bunch of stories on this. We've been chatting about it. We wrote about it actually a few weeks ago. Let's sort of set the table with a little bit of history. 2011, January 2011, there was a debate going on about whether or not to allow airports and to some degree airlines have private screeners. TSA at the time, if I remember correctly, the administrator was Pistol. Said they would not allow folks to actually any of these airports to have private screening. At that time, there were about 16 or so airports that had their own private screening staffs. They did have to go through TSA standards and procedures and a variety of other things, but they said no more. That was in 2011. All right, so that was sort of at the tail end of the recession. It took a while for people to get back. Now let's set the stage now. Every day, if you're a TSA security person, you have to, you and your compatriots have to check in and get through security over 2 million passengers in the U.S. There's a huge drop-off rate for this particular job, and just remember, this is one of those jobs. If you make one mistake and somebody gets through, the consequences are potentially devastating. So it's a high-stress job. It's also sort of tedious. It's a job where people are have to do the same thing over and over again. It's tough to keep morale up in jobs like this. We've even seen the same kind of issue with air traffic controllers. All it takes is one mistake, and they have to do this over high-stress jobs. So let's put that in context as well. Now we have 6% more passengers out there for this summer than we did last summer. So that's the projections. Amidst that backdrop, TSA PreCheck program, which is really sort of the big issue that we're having, was expected to have about 25 million people sign up for it by now. And just it's simple. If you go through PreCheck, because you've been pre-vetted and you have pre-9/11 screening, shoes on, laptops in the bag, liquids stay in the bag, you're going through a metal detector. It's about half the time to get people through PreCheck than the other. Since they thought that they would have another, I guess somewhere around 17 million people, they actually cut back some staff for the last 4 or 5 years, somewhere in the 4,400 range. And because of that, it's not that easy. And you have the drop-off each month of folks that are in that particular job. They just haven't been able to replace those, nor can they actually just turn a faucet on and add back in 4,000 or 5,000 that they probably need to get everybody through security this summer. Recipe for disaster, and I did that all in one breath, by the way.
I want to let you know I have not signed up for PreCheck yet. Yes, I'm an idiot. Yes, I'm going to. But in the meanwhile, every now and then, I look at my boarding pass and I say, "Ooh, goody! It says PreCheck on it." And I'll tell you, it's you can't count on such things.
Yeah, here's part of the problem too, right? So they were randomly selecting people and giving them pre-check so they could go through the
Yeah.
pre-check line. They had to discontinue that for the most part because somebody on the domestic terrorist watch list actually got selected for that. And so when that occurred, apparently that wasn't something they had expected, so they quit doing that to some degree. They also had a bunch of people that were testing things and got through a bunch of things through security that they weren't supposed to get through. And so now the only way they're supposed to actually pull you out of the main line if you haven't been pre-checked is by actually having dogs, and if the dog can do his thing and sniff you over and says go ahead, then they can move you over into pre-check. And they're talking about moving dogs into some of these bigger airports to hopefully pull some people out of the lengthy lines and get them through pre-check. I've heard even this morning that the pre-check line in Chicago was extremely long as well. So this is a logistical nightmare. It hurts airlines, it hurts airports. Here in Dallas, we had, I think, 5 or 6 planes delayed, waiting for people to get through security lines that had actually gotten there at the recommended time. This is only going to get worse over the next 6-7 weeks.
Yeah, so in the peak summertime, you're going to have to, I know that every airline is saying on its website, and I'm sure on Twitter and whatnot, they're saying get to the airport early. And that means 2 hours before your flight is supposed to leave for a domestic flight and 3 hours for international, and maybe even earlier, they say. And people, if you look at the hashtag hate the wait, you will see people are missing flights, and also flights are departing late because enough people are still in line in security. But either way, it's not good. And sign up for pre-check.
Yeah, well, the problem now, Ann, is that everybody's trying to do it, and it's hard to get in now for the next month and a half or two to get your pre-check stuff done. Now, if you're leaving between 6:30 in the morning and 9:30 in the morning, or heading out 3:30 to about 6, that's when the crush occurs. And so if you can avoid that, if you haven't bought your ticket yet, you need to be shopping, by the way, if you haven't bought your ticket for summer yet. But there are, TSA also has a couple things. They have an app. You can see how long the wait times are. There's a couple different Twitter feeds you can actually send a message to, and they have some information about the length of lines. There's also other gates sometimes that have fewer people in it. I know I've snuck in at DFW Airport into Terminal A and made my way to D when the lines are extremely long, or I thought I was going to be late. So there's ways to do it. You just have to be prepared for it.
And one real simple way is know the rules for going through the security checkpoints and be ready. Like if you have a bottle of water, throw it away. If you don't have your license and your boarding pass out, get that out. If you're going to have, you're in the slow line, you're going to have to take off your shoes, get your shoes out. Make it so that, and if everybody does this, it will go a little bit faster, and anything is better than what it is.
Yeah, I think if we had a few more people at TSA that had stopwatches, measuring the time it takes people to get through, maybe that would give people a little bit of a sign. Hey, this is all about numbers, right? I got to get N number of people to their destinations through this choke point. Let's do it, right? So be ready and be prepared. I agree with you. And wearing those shoes that you have to unlace for 45 minutes in line is not a good idea.
You said this is about numbers. Let's talk about numbers, because you spotted an airfare hike not too long ago.
Yeah, airlines do this all the time. They're probing to see if they can raise fares. They've been doing it all this year, not as often as they've done in years past, for example. But this is changing all the base airfares. Sometimes the changes are actually for short advance purchase tickets, 7-day advance purchase, more expensive ones in some cases. So those $200 round trips that are out there typically don't catch some of these, but for the most part, that means the tide's raised on ticket prices. We had Delta announcing that they were going to reduce or cut back some capacity for some winter travel because of they're not making as much per unit revenue as they thought they were, and so this whole thing about capacity control and capacity discipline is certainly something. It's something the Department of Justice is already looking into with airlines. But the bottom line is, if every flight's full, your only sort of defense is buy on the cheaper days, find a little bit different destinations that's cheaper, fly on a connecting flight, and unfortunately these airfare hikes tend to stick more often, by the way, and on the smaller and mid-size airports. The bigger ones with competition, typically the daily changes in and out and the inventory changes in and out make those prices much cheaper than the smaller and medium-sized cities.
I know some people, they hear the phrase airfare hike and they immediately think, oh, well, now tickets are out of sight, but you can still find deals even in the midst of hikes.
Yeah. No, I actually did about 10 radio shows in different cities this morning. All of them ask about different deals, and each one of them had a different destination or two that was inexpensive, for example, for late June travel, which is a perfect summertime travel date.
Okay, cool. We have a question from a customer right now.
Yeah, sure.
Andrew, his name is Andrew. I do not know where you're from, Andrew, but I'm guessing in the United States because your question is about Southwest. And he says, which airline's rewards program is the best? And he says, I have a Southwest card that I got with a bunch of points, but realize I rarely travel on Southwest. And he was walking through the airport and was offered a Chase card with points. Which airline should I start traveling on regularly to get the best rewards?
Yeah, it sounds like Andrew probably is in a city where he has multiple choices. A lot of cities only have one or two choices. Yeah. So maybe that's LA, maybe it's Chicago, maybe it's New York. Let's assume for the sake of argument that he's in one of those bigger cities where he does have American, Delta, let's see, who did I miss? United and Southwest Airlines. To be honest, and I'm a city that has Southwest Airlines and American, which are probably 90+% of all traffic, out of Dallas. If you fly on a particular airline or you have an affinity towards a particular airline, you definitely want to sign up, for their rewards program no matter what. Sign up for all the airlines. It helps you get boarding passes and a variety of other things, even if you're not an elite traveler. It doesn't sound like Andrew flies much, so he's not talking about elite status where he's flying a whole bunch and getting his points. It's more like he's accumulating them on the credit card itself. So there's a couple of ways to look at it. I know that a variety of folks have tried to say, what is the virtual currency worth for these particular airlines? Somewhere between 1.5 cents and 2 cents is typically what you'll find per mile or per point. All the airlines have moved to this new points-based system where basically you're getting quote-unquote units based on how much you spend as opposed to how far you flew. So I don't know if any one of them is better than the other. Some have inventory on certain routes for award seats. They all tend to have fewer award seats than you would normally do. Especially if you're accumulating on a credit card. You also have capital rewards on the Capital One credit cards. You also, and to me, the competition is also cash back cards. Some of them give back 1, 2, 1.5%, 2% cash back. So if you're not really a super frequent flyer, and unless you are really spending a lot of money on your credit card, at least $10,000 or $5,000 to $10,000 each month to accumulate points for a trip, you probably should just get a cash back card. I personally have I have both the Southwest card, which is I believe a Chase card, and as well as the American card, which is a Citibank card, and I actually use them, but I fly a lot. So if you start flying a lot, Andrew, then it's about, are you going to be flying international or not, and do you want to redeem rewards? But for the most part, all the programs are pretty much the same, hard to redeem in some cases on the legacy airlines like American, United, Delta in some cases. Southwest, pretty easy to redeem in many cases, but but it's harder to accumulate if you're only flying. So I wouldn't really give a thumbs up to any of them. I personally put a lot of my stuff on an SPG card because I can transfer, for example, those miles to American Airlines at 1.2 when I do need some miles on American for something. So I actually get a little bit more benefit, plus I can redeem it for hotels. So you also should look at those kind of options as well. Some good places you can look at. The Points Guy has a great blog with this stuff. You also have Flyer Talk, which is a great bulletin board system to check out these stuffs, read up on this if you want to become a hobbyist on points. So you definitely, if you want to get the most out of your points, you have to be a bit of a hobbyist and read up a little bit more on it.
Well, and with that,
I also did that in one breath. I did that in one breath too.
Let's go on to something. Look,
I don't even have notes, Ann. I don't see this. I have no paper or anything. I promise you, this is all from memory.
Let's talk about something I can understand. We're going to talk about Eventurist, and we're going to talk about the race for the Conch swim.
Yeah. All the way to Turks and Caicos for one of the actual event of the week on the Eventurist app. Every morning I get up, I check out the Eventurist app. It was really cool to see the event details and the interesting picture. I think it's in early July, Turks and Caicos, which is, now you and I are going to have to work on this pronunciation, the conch swim. I think it's a conch shell. I don't know if some people call it conch, but I think it's conch. So let's conch each other in the head and head out to Turks and Caicos.
You spell it C-O-N-C-H. That's the swim, and it just sounds like, it's a beautiful thing to participate in if that's the sort of thing one likes. But even better is just to be around this crystalline bay and seeing dolphins jumping around, and you don't have to swim if you don't want to. You can just watch and there's turtles like right near you too, apparently, and these shells, no,
actually, I was in nearby there and actually had fresh conch one time on a boat outing, and it has a really cool little jelly worm-looking spine. If you get somebody that can pull that off, so for those of you that are aficionados of conch, you can give that a try. And by the way, my daughter almost barfed when she saw me do that. So it's always good to make sure that your kids are around if you decide to eat that.
And there you have it. And everybody, Eventurist is just really so good because it tells you, it gives you not just gorgeous places to go, but it tells you what's going on in these places. Like
what's going on, how to get the airfare, when to shop for the airfare, all those kind of.
It gives you deals.
Yeah, if you're bored, check it out. It's something new all the time. You can favorite things. You can put it in your folder and check those things out. So I have fun with it. It's definitely inspired me to go to a few different places that I hadn't thought of. Yeah, check that out. It's on the App Store, both App Stores actually, for both Apple and Android. So you can do it on Google Play or the iTunes App Store. So check that out.
And I just want to throw this out. If anybody's got a question for Rick, please send it to customer.service@FareCompare.com.
Yeah, so if I was Andrew, I'd get every card that I thought I might be flying as long as I'm spending a lot on it. And if not, I'd go with the 2% cash back.
Cool. Thanks Rick.